soon as they eat the food, they clothes like bust off and
It's
stuff.
like
They don't show
somebody
nothing.
drew this.
Yes,
Somebody
but it's
signed
very.
off on this.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to watch it because I like food, and I gotta be careful that nobody walk in the room. Like my girl don't walk in the room, my boy don't walk in the room, and they're like, "What the is you watching?" But I'm like, "No, it's real good. Like trust me, it's just about cooking."
What's up, comrades? Welcome to the Brochure List, where caring is cool and we bring you the masculinity without the toxicity. I am your host, Andre. I'm joined here with my co-hosts, Tunde, Josh, and Dante. Thank you for joining us. While you're here, make sure, like, comment, subscribe, share on your social media platforms. We appreciate you joining us. We're here on February 2nd, recording. You're probably hearing this on the following Monday, so thanks for tuning in. What is the Brochure List? The Brochure List is, we want to come together, and our goal is to provide an avenue for people to stay in tune with politics in a way that isn't dry and really boring, like your typical news podcast or your typical news station, the CNN, the Fox News, and stuff like that. And we think this stuff is important to stay involved with, so we wanted to be an avenue for people to be interested in these types of things while not being too dry and injecting some entertaining topics into it while we do it. And we know these things are intertwined. Sports, pop culture, politics, you can't really separate them. We deal with them in our day-to-day life. We see on ESPN, they're talking about politics. We see on Fox News, they're talking about sports sometimes. But we want to make it a little bit more enjoyable for you as a viewer to stay interested in these type of things. You can enjoy sports, comedy, and football and film, and care for social issues and not be a social justice warrior. Those things are important. And for those who may be wondering, we use the term bro as a gender neutral term. This isn't just a male thing. We might talk about a lot of sports and comedy and media that would typically surround and revolve around masculine culture in our society, but we acknowledge that this is not exclusive to male identifying genders. So to start it off, I want to take it off to my panel and ask around, what does toxic masculinity mean to each of you? When you hear the word toxic masculinity, what do you think of this term that masculinity isn't necessarily bad in its own right, but we've heard it, coming from the left a lot towards, the more traditional way in which our society carries itself, and a lot of maybe more traditional center right-wing folks view it as, some type of weaponized attack. We believe that you can still like masculine things but still care, but what does that mean to you?
So I'll get it started. First of all, great job for Dre introducing our podcast. One thing, he did use my government name, so if my probation officer watching this, don't even worry about it. I go by Tune. Everybody know me as Tune. But toxic masculinity means to me that you're really not enjoying your life because you're so worried about what the other males around you are gonna think. What certain women are gonna think, that you're not acting a certain way that's quit the status quo. So it's I'm all about like living your life to the fullest, having fun and enjoying everything you do, no matter what people think. So if you letting toxic masculinity get in the way of that, I really think that's a problem that we as a society have. So
Toxic masculinity to me is basically taking your ideas or whatever you think or what you like to do, and then worrying about what other people think, like women or men in general, how they think about you, and then trying to change yourself internally, and then projecting that across whatever you want to do. So masculinity to me, toxic masculinity would be something like that. I honestly think that that's a big problem in like male communities in general, is just trying to project something that you're actually not, trying to play tough, stuff like that, especially with women. That's just not cool in general. So that's kind of why I wanted to start this podcast as well, because a lot of podcasts nowadays kind of do that nonstop. So I just kind of want to be different. So that's kind of why I'm joining the podcast as well. So moving on to Tay.
Yeah, I think those guys, they hit it right on the nail with, all their definitions of toxic masculinity. I mean, just echo what they were saying. I believe toxic masculinity is just the fear of just not wanting to be yourself and not express yourself the way you want to because of what your peers or close friends or what society deems is okay and what society deems is right. And here at the Brochurelist, we just want to make everyone, every male, every female. I said female. I want to make every person feel comfortable in expressing just who they are, and that's just what we want to do.
Yeah, I think that's all really good ads, and I think in general you get the sense that in society it's this, like, I think Dabs used a great word, and like projecting what you think the standard should be and not living to your fullest self, as Tunde said, giving off this, I don't know, this feel and look about yourself that maybe isn't true because you want to fit within these specific roles, and it's suboptimal both as how society operates in achieving equality. Obviously we see the long-term like ramifications of toxic masculinity, both of them, equality amongst the sexes or non-sexes, and then also just how I think a lot of we've seen this thing lately where a lot of men seem disenfranchised based on typical roles that have been created by masculinity itself. And for example, I think, Debs, you made a note of it, how we're seeing a lot of podcasts come out nowadays about how that have these more toxic traits of that men are deserving of certain things and that the female gender or female sex owes them these types of things, and that's that they're kings, and you can make fun of women's weight if they can make fun of our height, et cetera, et cetera. Where in reality, over time, toxic masculinity and traditional culture has cultivated these types of ideas, and now we have a lot of men like playing the victim, and you've kind of created this like victim mentality in a situation that you've created in yourself. And not saying that individual men have created this situation for themselves, but as a culture, what we have kind of developed as as a species.
I just want to say that Dre is like 6'2", so I don't know what he talks about short men. So I guess he not toxic. He not toxic because he ain't short. But yeah, I think he hit you right on the head. I always reference when you at a party, chilling with a bunch of ladies and stuff, and it's always that one dude who just projecting like, oh, I'll beat your ass. Hey, give me that bottle. You always got people like that who always trying to play a front, and it ruins the vibe.
It's like men in general feel like the need that they feel like they want to be, physically tough or whatever, but like toughness and creating that aura around yourself isn't just about like, I'm doing this, and like all that stuff. Like it's different ways to go about it, you feel me, than just like flexing all the time and all that stuff. So, I mean, I'm not trying to say like this is what you should do or this is what you shouldn't do. I'm just saying like in the world today, it's a lot of that going on. And then also with like playing the victim role, at the same time, I also understand like from a male perspective that we're not seen as like sensitive or like having emotions and stuff like that. So that's also a problem. I'm not going to say it's just all men, all women. There's different, perspectives around that too. So I feel like being more open with men about their emotions and stuff like that could also help from the other side as well. So.
Yeah, it has to be so exhausting trying to like live yourself in that macho manner at all times, and then also sacrificing any type of like support from, I don't know, your partner or friends or family because you want to give off that presentation that you don't need that, when every day you're presenting this hyper masculine self that you need to be macho, that you don't need anyone. You're robbing yourself of, I think, living a fulfilled life. And then also it's got to be exhausting operating under that constraint all the time.
I do think some people are just like born into that though, right. Some of the, it's a lot of times you're a result of your environment. So if you're born in a place where you have to be like that, it's eat or be eaten, you kind of have no,
That's true.
you have no choice. So we, I think, part of Dre's mission, our mission is to get people on there who even, maybe we not having that viewpoint, but they can come in and talk to us about why are they like that. We can give them an avenue to outlet and, tell us their frustrations. And, maybe they do see that, hey, it's not really necessary, that there are people that you can be bros with that just, will be there for you emotionally. And you just don't have to be like that. But I think a lot of people don't even know that,
like touching
it's
on
not
that,
normal.
like, right? Like,
it doesn't have to be
I feel
normal.
like as a person, just by myself, like I feel like I've grown a lot from that, because I came from like a place, right, where it was like really like you had to be like that all the time. You had to defend yourself, and being like a black man in society, it feels like sometimes you have to be like that all the time, right? I grew up to a certain extent and like learned about myself, right? Learned about how emotional I am, controlling that, right? And I'm like a completely different person now than when I was like 4 or 5 years ago. And a lot of people can attest to that, right? So it's just about, yeah, like, and at certain points I'm still like
Shit,
that
I'm
too.
still
Like,
learning.
it's not going to be perfect, right? But at the same time, it's
Right,
just
it's an
about
everyday battle.
looking yourself in the mirror and saying like, this is like a problem, and then fixing it. It's not just saying like, all men are like this. Like, we're just trying to bring awareness in order for you to maybe look at yourself a different way, or, help somebody else that's doing that as well. So.
Tell you what you said, it was an everyday battle. Like I feel that.
Everyday battle, man. It seems like it's I know for me it's an everyday battle. Just being able to express my feelings, and you're not not masking everything in, and being able to have that safe place with your friends and your brothers. I mean, and it's okay, and it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be sensitive. You don't have to put on this mask all the time. And I think that's just our major goal here. It's just for this to be, a safe place, and for it to not be toxic. So yeah, I think we all express and want the same mission here. So yeah.
I agree.
So as we said at the beginning of the show, this is politics and pop culture. So we'll start this off with our first segment, What's Happening Now? This is, imperative things that are going on in the world that, regardless of where you align, maybe socially or morally, that, we feel that people should be aware of these things. You don't have to be an expert in what's going on. And, we hear a lot of nowadays, do your own research. And I truly believe that, but I believe in, doing the right research, objective research. So, we're going to touch on these things here, but if anything piques your interest, or maybe you challenge some of the things that we say here, we obviously greatly encourage you to go, investigate these things on your own, and not just, take our word at face value. And do the research and back what's going on in your environment. So the first thing, and I think this has been in news a lot lately that we want to talk about, is what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. Now, I know some people might have heard of what's going on in Ukraine a few years ago during the impeachment trials. I can't remember the exact year during the Trump impeachment towards the end of his presidency, but that's what the presidency or the impeachment trials were circulating around. There was the quid pro quo, which essentially the prosecutors were addressing the fact that they felt that Trump had offered military aid in exchange for certain favors around information around the Bidens. And we're not really here to address that, perhaps, but to talk about just Ukraine in general. And that might have been the first place you heard it, but things have been ramping up lately. For those of you who don't know what's going on in Ukraine, currently Russia Russia, a bordering country, is setting up troops, around 100,000 at this point, on its eastern border. Ukraine is formerly a part of the Soviet Union or the USSR, and departed in 1991. In 1994, they gained complete amnesty after giving back nuclear warheads that belonged to Russia. So there was some type of exchange for their amnesty. But these international affairs are hyper complex. I know a lot of people look at it through this very small lens, but there's so many variables in play. You have all these neighboring countries that are involved, their world leaders. You have Putin, who's obviously a very influential world leader, regardless of how you feel about him. The U.S., a very influential country. NATO, so North Atlantic Treaty Alliance or organization, and though their populists are obviously weighing as well. So this has been, coming to a head for some time now, but things are starting to kick into full gear. So I don't know if anyone has anything, to say initially before we get into some like the nitty gritty of what's been going on.
I was doing some research, not like research. I don't like to say research because Google isn't research, just looking for a couple of seconds. So I don't want to falsely say research. But my biggest question is like, what? So Ukraine is trying to get into NATO, right? Or is that not true?
Right.
Yeah, so
it's like...
go ahead, Dante.
No, go ahead, Dre.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dre.
So the way that it seems is that in 2014, I believe, Ukraine was in talks to join NATO, which is essentially the alliance that have formed against the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, so against Russia. So the U.S. joined a lot of Western European countries in this alliance against the Soviet Union, which has since expanded to a lot of Eastern European countries now as well. And I believe a few years ago, around 2014, Ukraine was essentially about to join NATO, and obviously Russia doesn't like that because there's a lot of political things at play there. But the population of Ukraine, a lot of the Ukrainians that are in the western part of Ukraine, didn't. When the country ended up backing out of the NATO deal, a lot of the Ukrainians got upset because they wanted to join NATO. So then, as a result, Russia actually started pushing into Ukraine. So they took Crimea, which is a small peninsula of Ukraine, and that kind of like kicked off the separatist movements in eastern Ukraine, etc. So yeah, it essentially started out of the fact that Russia didn't want them to join as a fact. So I know Putin made some recent demands that he wants NATO to stop expanding eastward. He wants all NATO troops out of Eastern Europe. He's like pretty much demanding that Ukraine won't join NATO. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on at this current moment.
I feel like he believes that Ukraine and Russia should be one. I mean, they were once a part of the USSR, and I believe a lot of the people in Ukraine are from Russian descent. So to him, he feels like as though Ukraine should be one with Russia, and they shouldn't have as much westward. They shouldn't, want that westward expansion and influence. And that they should just be one. So I think that's the main takeaway from all of this.
It's like Ukraine's on the border, right? Like it's a lot of different countries that's like formed with NATO, right, surrounding Russia. So I think from like a military standpoint, he doesn't want a bunch of NATO countries, I guess, surrounding him that far, right? And then also, I don't know, trade routes or whatever it is, but like I just think it puts him in a bad situation. But at the same time.
Yeah, so if you're on YouTube right now, I'll throw up a map of kind of what NATO looks like now and Ukraine's geographic position to Russia. But Dabs is kind of hitting the nail on the head in that Ukraine is kind of that buffer to Russia and those NATO countries, because Russia doesn't have any like geographic separation. Like a lot of countries have geography helping them defensively if any conflict kicks off, whether it be water or mountains or etc. Russia, it's pretty much flat. There's no mountains really separating them from Eastern Europe, and obviously they're the NATO and the West, and there's not much water to defend them as well. I mean, there's obviously the northern Arctic Ocean up north, but there's not anything to really defend them geographically. So losing such a big country in Ukraine and having that join NATO essentially leaves them at your front doorstep if any conflict kicks up.
But Dre also talked about, water being like a big, important resource for a country to have. And, Ukraine and the south end of Russia meet right where the Black Sea is. So now that Russia has taken back Crimea, they have control over that strait that leads into a smaller sea. I can't remember the name, but then they also, I think the Ukrainians sent some ships over to use that port or that isle that they had been using forever. Russia said turn around, got the gunships out, and sunk a couple of ships and like took a bunch of people hostage. So it doesn't seem like a huge deal, I think, to us Westerners, but there's a lot of people like even dying over there due to this conflict, and it doesn't really seem like it on our news, but it does seem pretty tough on there. And another huge thing about that waterway is that they're trying to make their so the Russia sells a lot of Russia sells a lot of natural gas to like the European Union countries, and that pipeline goes straight through Ukraine. So they're trying to if they do lose Ukraine, they're already pre-planning for that. They're planning to put that pipeline through the Black Sea, because they already own that because of Crimea. So anytime there's aggression between countries like this, I think it always comes down to dollars. They're worried about natural resources. They're worried about land. They're worried about alliances, and I think that's all what it comes down to here.
Yeah.
Like the end of the day, though, are we I really, do you guys believe that we're gonna like war is actually gonna happen, or like do you guys just think this is just like political stuff? Because I personally don't think anything's gonna happen, and it's not just me saying like the whole thing isn't important. I'm just saying like at the end of the day, it just comes down to, all right, y'all do this, America gonna do this, so don't do it.
Yeah.
But like they just flexing power. I don't know, but it just seemed like that's just the end goal, because I can't see us like going out there with troops and like fighting off Russia. Like I just can't see it in my whole like perspective.
Yeah, I mean, 100,000
I
people, 100,000 troops, like regardless of your technological advancements, is not a lot to try and invade a country with a standing army and like a backing from Western countries, obviously. So I agree that it might be far-fetched to think that they'll actually invade, but the dynamics in Ukraine are interesting because they've been fighting for a few years now with separatists, and essentially a lot of eastern and southern Ukraine, those people identify as Russian. They have family in Russia, as Tunde said, a lot, and I think Dante said as well. Ukraine and Russia, many people view them as one, especially Putin. I think that's like where a lot of his motives are coming from. One of his parents was Ukrainian. The former Russia actually began, in terms of like land-wise, I believe it began in Ukraine itself. So there's like a lot of ties there. And a lot of Eastern Ukrainians and Southern Ukrainians are sympathetic to Russia. So you're not only fighting Russia, you end up fighting a lot of your own citizens. So it becomes, this political tug and pull with your own populace and then, these external forces as well.
Because NATO has influenced these. He talked about like the separatists or the rebels, and NATO is the one. NATO, including us, are like giving them weapons and stuff like that. And obviously, if someone came to California was trying to separate from the United States, and say China, or somebody was trying to like fuel that fire and help them separate from us, I don't think we would appreciate that either. So like being non-biased and obviously not really doing, we didn't do research. We Googled some stuff, watched some YouTube videos. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but if you put yourself in Putin's shoes, I kind of understand where he's coming from. It's not like he's, how we, took Puerto Rico or whatever, like annexed Puerto Rico. It's not really the same thing. Because like Dante said, that is like kind of they people, and a lot, and like, almost half, maybe a little less, agree that, they want to go back to Russia. They want to be a part of like Russia instead of the Western NATO or the EU. So I think it's just a tricky situation on both parts. But I think everyone's got their ulterior motives. I think NATO's got ulterior motives. They want the natural resources in Ukraine. They want to get closer to Russia. That's what it was built for. To stop the USSR from growing into this huge world dominating power. So I think we can't look at it as like good and evil, which I think a lot of people definitely when the media gets involved start doing.
Yeah, it's definitely complex. And a lot of these, I mean, like you said, it's dollars. A lot of these countries are having to make business decisions. Like Germany had been getting a lot of flack from the rest of NATO about the support they were providing, because, America's sending billions of dollars in support over the last few years, and same with some other NATO countries. But a lot of these NATO countries, they're getting like 1/3 of their resources or energy from Russia, and so they're having to prepare for this independency from Russia. And then Russia obviously has that dynamic at hand where supposedly they've been, jacking up the cost of said resources, but their economy is super dependent on these countries. So they have that within their kind of, mind state and trying to decide whether or not this is worth it. Because if you lose, access to those funds from those countries, and you're trying to have a wage a war at the same time, that war is expensive. You're losing income, which is a third of the energy from some of these countries, and they're going to try and start becoming independent, energy independent from you. So, like I said, there's a lot of variables that go on that are hard to predict in these international relations situations. And like Tunde said, it's not super black and white. There's a lot of people's shoes that you have to put yourself in. A lot of people in eastern Ukraine that might believe that they should be a part of Russia. I mean, that's what they were raised. They might have been raised Russia. Some of them have family in Russia that they can't go see. So obviously it's hard dynamics to kind of sift through.
Bro, did you guys know how like diverse Russia is? I don't know if like you saw this in like your looking up at this story and stuff, but it's ridiculous. Like they have like 22 different republics, and, they have people in the north who are like very Asian, with Asian beliefs. I saw like Buddhist temples in Russia. They speak a mixture of like Russian, Mongolian. The country is so damn big. Like you have different kind of people everywhere. You have like Icelandic people, not Icelandic, but ice people. You have Southern people with like very Muslim. Like if you look at like Khabib, the UFC fighter, like he is a devout Muslim, and he almost looks very Middle Eastern, but he is definitely Russian, it was crazy to me just to see how diverse it was there.
Well, we hope that if you're interested, you should definitely do your own Googling. Like Dav said, we aren't independent researchers. We don't have the funding to do independent researching, but definitely look at trusted data sources. If there's any facts that we're kind of spewing out, if you're going to research against it, make sure you're doing peer-reviewed research, not, Facebook post research. But we're going to move into our next topic. And this one is, kind of contentious in the current political climate. And I don't think it's only in the political climate, because we see this also in our corporate workplaces and various other, places in our society. So during his presidential run, Biden, committed to appointing the first black woman justice to, the Supreme Court. Right now, we're sitting at a 6-3 conservative Supreme Court, obviously. So this decision shouldn't weigh too much into, the transitioning of the court. It's not going to flip the court. It's not going to make it really any more liberal or progressive or conservative. I mean, I highly doubt Biden will elect a progressive justice. But a lot of pushback, I guess, from the right side would be that, should Biden be committing to electing or appointing a black female justice, as opposed to just picking the most, qualified candidates? Yeah, outside of those race and sex parameters.
When is midterms? Like when exactly is midterms?
This year. So it'll be in the fall.
Biden is a funny guy. I will say that. He's a funny guy.
I'm rooting for everybody black.
That is true. Like, to a certain extent,
Shout out
like,
Issa Rae.
I might be like, y'all can agree or disagree with me. I feel like a lot of politicians do stuff in general to just appease the black community, because I feel like our voices are heard majority of the time, especially on social media. The fact that this man just literally said, "I will elect a black woman justice," and then some people just eat it up like that, is just ridiculous to me. Like, I honestly believe that it's just like anything else political, right? I don't like that at all. Like, as a black person, I really don't. Like, I kind of see through it. Like, it'd be cool to have like a black woman justice. Like, honestly, like I'm not against it or nothing like that, or I'm for it or whatever it is. And like Biden can't fix everything racially and all this other stuff. Like that's like small steps to get there. But it's just like picking a specific person because of their race, because of whatever reason you want to do it. I just think sits wrong with me. Like I feel like you should. Like I kind of agree with the right side to a certain extent that you should just elect people based on what you like, what their job description is, and who you think would be best fit for the job. Like just saying like black person, and it's not like Biden don't have like a record of doing all this. Like when he said like if you don't vote for me, you're not black, and all this other stuff that he says. Like it's just now it's just falling on deaf ears to me. Like I really don't really feed into it really. No,
I can't see you got on the MAGA hat.
Listen, I'm not. Listen. I'm not. I'm just saying, like you guys have to like. You guys don't like. I just see it from a different perspective because I look at stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, I think that it's obviously, it was obviously a virtue signal when he did it during his campaign. Like it's a close election. He's hoping to get every black and female vote that he possibly can. So it was definitely, I mean, so I think a lot of people are like losing context of this, especially on the right, in that to juxtapose this is that Ronald Reagan did this back in his election cycle. So obviously conservatives love Ronald Reagan for ruining, I guess, America. For some reason, they love him. But when he was on his election cycle, he was losing a lot of female votes because of his support for abortion, or sorry, his non-support for abortion rights or any type of female autonomy. So he made that promise during his campaign, and once he was elected, he did elect the first female. She was white, the first female justice, Sandra O'Connor, and she served from 1981 to 2006. So just people don't lose sight, because they think that like Biden's the first person to do this. But in response to what you're saying, Dabs, I completely agree that it's in my opinion, it's like a necessary evil. Like I don't really want. Like affirmative action doesn't really work for black people as it is, and it's kind of like an affirmative action type thing. Pretty much every study you look at, affirmative action helps white women more than any other like ethnic minority or racial minority. There's pretty much a lot of data backing that, especially in like universities. So I think it's definitely a virtue signal, but I also agree that there should be like a black female justice. So I don't want to feel like I'm aligning with Biden, but just like for some context before I let Tunde and Dante get in, as of 2018, there have been 113 justices. So there will now be one more because compared to this number, so 114 because there was one more elected at the end of Trump's presidency. 107 of those 114 now have been white men. So only 2 have been black. And now 5 have been women, one of those women which was Hispanic. None obviously have been gay yet. So only about 5% have been any woman or minority. Obviously, the Civil Rights Act didn't pass until 1960s. So, I mean, a lot of people didn't have the right to vote. So you're looking at a really small time frame. I get that. But even for women, and let alone white women, like looking at the span of America, and that this justice, these lists of justice have like such a long-term effect on this nation's policies, and for there to only have been 2 black up until this point against 114 total justices now, and then even, I mean, it's just I think that it's even worse that there's only been 4 women, or now 5 women, because I mean women are 50% of the population, so that's even worse representation amongst this. So I don't know, Tunde and Dante, I don't know what kind of input you have here.
I guess what I would say is, I mean, I feel like all of our political systems, just in America in general, I mean, America's a melting pot, so I believe that it should who we have in power, it should reflect what America looks like. You got people from all demographics, all walks of life. It's not just white and black. You got people from from everywhere. So I believe if Joe Biden wants to implement the first black woman into a Supreme Court justice role, if she fits the criteria, I don't see a problem with that. She's only one. It's only one of her, and I believe how many Supreme Court justices are there? I think
there's
like
9.
Is it 9?
Yeah, it's changed throughout history, but right now it's 9.
Yeah, so I mean, she's the only one. It's not like it's not like it's like all like black woman. It's like all black male. It's one. It's one. So I believe, like I said before, I believe that our justice system and just America in general should be how America is depicted on the grand scheme of things. America's a melting pot, so I don't have a problem with him trying to elect a black woman for a Supreme Court justice role.
My biggest thing is that, like Jay said, it's a lifetime position. So, these are the people who's going to make the rules for our children for, so it's lifetime. So it's very important to make sure that it is diverse and make sure that it is a representation of our country, like Tay says. I do kind of, agree with Dabs. I do have a pessimistic view that, in this country, in our politics system, everyone can be bought, which is very unfortunate. But you even look at like Kamala Harris, she was supposed to do all this stuff and, for like be the first, black female vice president. But if you look at her track record, like she did a lot of things like the war on drugs and everything like that. So I think that, everyone can be bought, but, representation is important. So one day, maybe the next person who is a black female, she can't be bought. She has a stronger moral, like ethical code than, not saying that this person can be bought, but I do think that American politics is whoever's the highest bidder, with lobbyists and all that are winning out. I care about politics. I like to be informed. I do believe in voting, but at the end of the day, it's very tough to even care about this stuff when, like Dab said, this can be performative. We're not being represented or people are just being bought out.
I'm mad at Biden.
It's hard for me to really take a big stand on this.
So I might have came off a little aggressive about it, but the whole administration right now is just
Student loans kicking your ass, huh?
The biggest lie.
I don't think that anyone and
I feel you.
Not until May.
Yeah.
Not until May.
I'm just getting them interest free right now. Just saving some
man.
interest right now.
It is what it is.
Just need another stimmy.
Yeah.
Come on.
And even though it might be apparent at this point that some of us have some, or for the most part, some left-leaning views. I'm pretty far left, but I don't think any of us like Joe Biden. Sometimes just the alternatives aren't that great. But maybe just to close out, I think my closing thoughts on this situation is that I hate the whole that we have to do this, but it's if this were a scale and white men were on one side and it's tipped this far and minorities and women are on this side, putting 50 pounds on each side, saying that it's equal now doesn't do anything. The scale is still tipped the same. Whereas, we have to add a little extra weight to, bring that equality amongst, these various groups. So our last topic and what's happening now, there's been a lot of rumblings about Mark Cuban's pharmaceutical company or his pharmaceutical sales company. So Mark Cuban opened up a pharmaceutical sales company called Cost Drugs Plus, offering lower priced generic drugs to the public. So you can go to his site if you want more information. There's a lot of obviously useful drugs for sale available through his site costplusdrugs.com for a long list of diseases and various other ailments from various cancers, HIV, diabetes, etc. So Cuban's pharmacy says it will negotiate drug prices directly with manufacturers to lower costs. The pharmacy doesn't accept health insurance, but says prices will still be lower than what people would typically pay at a pharmacy. And they do some additional pricing transparency. They say that they're buying at cost, 15% markup. That's what you're going to pay for these drugs. So just to add some context, currently U.S. brand name drugs are almost 3.5 times expensive as comparative developed nations around the world. When you compare our generic prices, actually, though, they're a little bit cheaper. They're 84% of the cost of some comparable countries, and that was a study done by Rand. So if you want to check that out on your own, but I don't know, what are your initial thoughts when you guys see Cuban, the billionaire Cuban opening up an online pharmacy?
I guess, my biggest thing is, it sounds amazing. Good for people who, one, don't have health insurance. And I can relate to, high medical costs, high medical bills, stuff like that. And a lot of it is prescriptions. I do hope that, there's, regulation, because, there are some drugs that people can get hooked on, people that can be very addictive. I'm not sure if any of those are on his website, but, there's always that issue of, are drugs going to be abused? I think we do have a drug crisis here in America that, isn't handled the correct way. And if this gives more ease of access, it's also going to increase, the amount of punishment that,
so just so people don't get confused,
I wasn't really sure about that.
Just so people don't get confused, the drug, you still have to show them a prescription to order through the site. So it's not like people can just go on there. You still need a doctor's script and send it to Cost Plus Drugs, and then they'll fill your position.
We're about to have Adderall. Is this the same thing as GoodRx?
I've never used that either. I rarely ever go to the pharmacy, to be honest.
I've never used it, but all the podcasts, me neither. But podcasts talking about like GoodRx will like lower the cost of prescription drugs.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's
if they're still charging a markup on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like it's good within the system that we have. I think ideally people shouldn't have to pay for drugs, though. I don't think anyone should have to pay for anything health related. If we had like something like universal health care, like I know some of the statistics I read earlier that our drugs are X amount more expensive than comparable countries or X cheaper than comparable countries. But the thing is, those countries that we're comparing against, none of the citizens pay for drugs. They have universal health care, and we know how expensive insurance is and how much that drives up the cost of just general health care. So if we didn't have to deal with that, we wouldn't need people like Mark Cuban, the billionaire, to set up a site to get us some cheap generic drugs. We would just have access to them through the taxes that we're paying.
So you're saying though? So you did say that our prices for generic drugs are lower than some of these other countries. Those countries you're mentioning, they have universal health care?
Yeah, so it's compared against like countries like Canada, UK, France, Italy, Spain, Germany.
Well, what the fuck? Yeah, that doesn't even matter.
What's saying the cost? Because obviously, if you have universal health care, there's still the government's footing the bill. It's still paying the pharmaceutical company, but it's just not coming out of your pocket. It's coming out of your pocket in the form of taxes, but you aren't paying insurance, you aren't paying premiums and co-pays. So it's just who's footing the bill, but then it gets more complex than that because then you're getting into insurance premiums and the amount of
them taxes hurt too, though.
The amount that our insurance is just marked up because we're paying big salaries to insurance companies to negotiate things that we could do ourselves, etc. So but then also like if there was proper regulation around pricing around these inflated drug prices. I know we hear a lot about insulin, about people rationing insulin in America, and I don't think insulin's something you can get from this company, but we hear about how often people rationing insulin, something that is life-saving, they need it, or splitting it between family members that if they share diabetes or something along those lines, which can be life or death. I mean, people have died trying to do it. You have people going to Canada and stocking up on it and then coming back down. And obviously you can't use your insurance, but it's still cheaper to not use insurance in Canada and buy insulin and bring it down, or even Mexico. And it's all the same thing. They're marking the price up. So, I mean, it's kind of good for you, Mark Cuban, but the systems that created something like this to be necessary are kind of nasty.
But I don't think these systems are ever going away though.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're not like from a healthcare management like standpoint, bro. Like the world, like most of the majority of the rich get rich off this, but like yeah, it's just not. I don't think it's ever going away. It's too much profit. It's too many.
Too
It's
much
too
money.
it's too much money, bro. It's way
So
too much money.
y'all think we move the pod to Toronto, Vancouver? Where we going?
I'm down. I ain't never been to Canada.
It's cold. Y'all thought it was cold here. That'll wrap up what's happening now. Some imperative, newsworthy stuff has kind of built up these last few weeks leading up to this first episode. So that's something we'll keep going back to when more imperative news starts coming up. But now we'll start getting to some more of our casual segments. So up first, what is Hollywood's obsession with teenagers and sex? And this is coming a lot out of I know that some of you may be watchers. I personally don't watch the show out of Euphoria. How overly sexualized the show is. So
He was just saying how like the effect that or why do we have these shows such as Euphoria that just has such an emphasis on teens with sex, drugs, all this kind of stuff. I personally also only watched the first season, so I think this is gonna be our segment for Dabs and Tay to take the reins on.
I think it's more than just like the sex and drugs, but how explicit it is and the portrayal of it being high schoolers or teenagers, where as opposed to a college, make it a college environment. But even like grown films, like I don't care to see that much. But go ahead, Tay. I know you've seen the show, so.
I mean, I feel like along with like the superhero genre right now, I feel like that that just high sex drive. I feel like that avenue is just what's hot in Hollywood right now. As far as what's Hollywood's obsession with it, I that's something I've been scratching my head on as well. Especially like you were talking about Dre. Most of these stories like Euphoria, they're depicted in high school, where it feels like it should be depicted in like college and everything. Because in high school, let's be honest, like you really don't know what you're doing. In college, you don't even know what you're doing. You really starting to really discover yourself in college. So you got like a whole bunch of older like people in their like 30s, late 20s. They're depicting high school. I would say high school experiences, and yeah, some may be true, but most of the time, like they're like we talk like in Euphoria, they're very overly sexualized, and I feel like that definitely plants some bad seeds into people's mind and in young minds and what they should be experiencing. I know Euphoria. They always before the show. What I will say about them is they always put before the show a disclaimer about like what it is that people are about to watch. So like if you're not comfortable with nudity, drugs, any of that, I mean this is just not the show for you. Go ahead, Dad.
This show in general is like just porn at this point. Like it's really just teenage porn.
It's like
I'm not gonna lie to y'all. Like
it's a tier above like softcore porn. Like really, like it's
like I just be sitting there, bro. Like, and I used to watch it with my girl, and like the first year, the first season and the second, it wasn't that bad. Like it wasn't that bad. It was more realistic and it was kind of something new. But this season, I haven't watched it with my girl, and like. It's just wild. Like every second, like it's either it's either a dick in the show at every 5 minutes. I promise
every
y'all,
possible boom. As soon as the episode starts,
every chance they get,
got
bro,
some
like,
white meat.
Like obviously, like spoilers ahead or whatever. But like Rue just sitting in the kitchen, like. She about to go get some drugs or whatever. Like she trying to sell drugs or whatever. Randomly, just old white man. I don't never seen him in the show ever before in my life. Just come in fully naked, go get some cereal, and just like walk back.
Walk right out.
And like it was just like, what the fuck was that? Like I don't get it. Like I really don't understand. Like it's just like in Hollywood now, it's just like everything's just aesthetically pleasing, and then they just push the boundaries of what you can show on TV, and then it's like, ooh, Emmy. Like that's basically what it is. It's like no plot anymore. It's just porn. That's at this point.
And I've been a fan of shows like this, and I used to really watch One Tree Hill, and they had like the themes of sex, drugs, party, and stuff like that. It was never explicit. Like they never showed anything. You watch Euphoria. I watched one episode like, last Sunday, and with my girl, and it's just ass, dick, everything. Um, One Tree Hill had a lot of those same themes about what I talked about, but they never had to show that. You still knew what was going on because obviously that happens in high school, but they didn't feel the need to show it. I think that it's because the show was so much better.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of when I was younger watching Degrassi Next Generation, so obviously not the original Degrassi. And our parents watched the original Degrassi. I guess it was the original for us. But if I ever watched that show and felt the same way, or if I looked at it and be like, I feel like I probably did. I was in like middle school probably watching that show, like this is what high school should be like. And I don't think Degrassi was as bad because it was on like Nick and stuff, or like Teen Nick, or something along those lines. But even like that show, looking back, I think was like somewhat adult, but it wasn't over sexualized. It seemed like somewhat within the realm of reality, but sometimes it's just like hard for me to watch some of these like newer shows. I feel uncomfortable, and as like a full 25-year-old adult, I feel uncomfortable watching a show with like sex. And I watch porn, like, but this is not what I came here for. Like, I'll be transparent. This is not what I came here for. And I've talked about before, like, I used to watch Big Mouth, and I don't, maybe some people haven't watched Big Mouth, but they did an episode where the kids, I mean, these are middle school, high school kids in Big Mouth, and they were naked. And granted, they're cartoon characters, but I felt so uncomfortable, I didn't watch another episode after that. And so, like, this isn't just a Euphoria thing, but it's just so weird to me. Like, I don't know, like, who is directing or producing these films, and, like, who is giving them the feedback that this is what they want to see or hear. It's just confusing.
It's weird, bro. It's very, very weird. Because like in your mind, I know they 30 years old, and like I know like blah, but like the whole story behind it, like I liked watching TV, and I'm like a different reality, honestly. So I'm just like focused. I'm focused every time I watch TV shows. It's like seeing them, and it's like I know they in high school, and it's like fucking. It's just weird, bro. Like I literally just turn the shit off, and I'm like, all right. But like I'm so captivated now. Like I gotta know what the end of the story happened. Like I gotta know what happened to Rue. So now I gotta watch this shit every Sunday. So it's like
it's like you kind of hooked. Like once you start.
I can relate though, because I'm a big anime guy. So one of my favorite animes is Food Wars. I like to cook. This anime is straight up about chefing. Like they in a big ass high school where like they all trying to become the #1 chef, and the food is like actual like culinary skills, everything like that put in the show. But when I tell you, I ain't never seen so much titties and ass in an anime. As soon as they eat the food, they clothes like bust off and stuff.
Like somebody drew this.
Somebody signed up on this.
I'm trying to watch it because I like food, and I gotta be careful that nobody walk in the room. Like my girl don't walk in the room, my boy don't walk in the room, and they're like, "What the fuck is you watching?" But I'm like, "No, it's real good. Like trust me, it's just about cooking." But I think that's a little different because it's anime. But even like what Dre was saying, it still makes you kind of feel uncomfortable when it's not what you come in for.
I don't feel like I should watch a show and like question I'm watching the show and I'm like looking
and hold the door
exactly. It's not that bad. Like I don't.
Yeah.
Okay, like a good example is like Game of Thrones. Like I don't feel like I lost anything by Emilia Clarke not being naked after the first season. Like now that I look back, it's like why did she have to be naked for this? And granted, like she put in her like as she became more prominent in her role, she put in her contract like I'm not going to be naked anymore. Good for her. And I know Zendaya does the same thing for Euphoria. She says I'm not going to be perceived in that way. Like good for them.
Yeah, Zendaya do the same thing.
But it's just weird because when I look back at the progression of the show, like this didn't add anything for me. And these are like beautiful people, like beautiful women, and good looking guys. Whatever is your take. But it's not what I want to see. Like you said, I don't want to watch the show and have to feel like I put a hand on the door in case someone walks in.
Anime is funny because anime is like it's mainstream. Like it's now just becoming mainstream. But like even when I was like a kid and stuff, like it's some shit in there, bro. Like they be wilding. Like very, very borderline. I'm not talking about like just sex. I'm talking about like males like with women, like interaction, bro. Like Japan, I don't know
Jiraiya,
what they was on.
Jiraiya
but,
Sensei.
like that's what I'm saying. Like it's not mainstream.
doing,
And, like,
Jiraiya
in Japan,
Sensei?
it's probably like fine. Like, but like as soon as this like anime get more and more mainstream, like people watch this stuff, like Gone and like Hunter x Hunter, like that, man. You know what, bro?
Yeah, like and there's
That's just
prominent
weird.
there's prominent characters in these shows that we love, and usually you fall in love with the show and then the characters show up. That's the worst part. It's not like it was there from the start to like lose your interest. Like Jiraiya is so weird in Naruto, and like if you watch Seven Deadly Sins on Netflix, like Meliodas, the main character, it's so hard to
really
watch sometimes
the
stuff that they're doing.
Perv.
And like that wouldn't be accepted anywhere. That's not acceptable anywhere. So,
Right. It's like, well, it's anime.
This is
That's
and this is kind of just a vent
I'm
conversation.
not sure if it's really even accepted in Japan though.
Yeah, I don't know.
In Japan,
They call them
it gotta be
otakus.
normal.
They call them otakus. It's not really. They like people who are like very into anime, like deep into anime. They call them otakus, and like it's not as accepted as we would think. You would think that it'd be huge there too, but no, it's not. Definitely like in the corporate world and stuff like that. Like it's.
And this isn't like us telling you like you shouldn't enjoy these things. They're obviously creating good media. Like we enjoy these, digesting these shows and movies.
I mean, I still, as messy as Euphoria is, I still enjoy it. It's just some scenes in it where I'm like,
Like
should
they
this
do
be
the
in
most.
here?
They
Does it
do
really
the
need to
most.
be in here? And like you go on like you go on Twitter and stuff afterwards, and people asking the same thing. They're like, okay, like, well, why did we need to see this? It was just like it's no relevance to the story. It's just there. So I'm like, I enjoy Euphoria, I do, but it's just some stuff. I'm just like, hey, like I ain't really need to see all that, So
Next segment. Smash or pass favorite Euphoria characters. Let's go.
You cut.
what?
I was trying to bring in the toxicity.
Good night. Good night.
I forgot. I thought this was my other podcast.
See ya.
I thought we were bringing the toxicity.
The toxicity without the masculinity. I don't know what that's called. Oh yeah. So yeah, like I said, this isn't us saying you can't enjoy these forms of media, but just bring it to light that this stuff isn't normal. So if you're out there thinking the same thing, it's not like only you. And if you are out there enjoying this, like, but take a look in the mirror, like, because you are weird. Right? Like if this is what you're watching these shows for, like there is
take a walk.
Horny
police, because there is a thing called pornography. It's free. You don't have to like go watch a good show to get this. It's elsewhere. And also you're a pedophile because you're like fetishizing the idea that it's someone like young. So yeah, let's let's move past that.
Check yourself. Check it.
We're gonna get off media a little bit now and head into sports. And this was a last minute add to the doc, but I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Biden saying that he'll lack a black woman justice. So whether you watch football or not, I think this is kind of imperative to like have the know on. So Brian Flores brings a suit suing the NFL and multiple NFL teams for racism and discrimination. Obviously, the NFL might not have the best track record with race, considering all the Kaepernick stuff and how much they settled out of court with him. So to try and make this digestible, I'll explain this in hopefully the most simplest ways possible. Brian Flores is the coach of the Miami Dolphins for a few years after leaving the New England Patriots as a coach there under very prominent coach Bill Belichick. Brian Flores, very early in his tenure, I believe in his first year, was approached by the owners asking him to lose games in exchange for $100,000 per game that they would lose in order to attain a higher draft pick. Now, many of you might not understand the ramifications behind this, but this is very illegal if true, for one thing, because Vegas does not play with their money.
Very bad.
Does not play with their money. But this is just like the tip of the iceberg. But in addition to that, The ownership of the Miami Dolphins thought it was a good idea to tamper, which is against the NFL rules, to have coaches discuss trades and free agency with certain players while they are still on another team. So presumably, cited in said suit, it seems that the Dolphins were trying to set up a meeting between head coach Brian Flores and Deshaun Watson, who is currently under civil investigation for 24 cases of sexual assaults. So presumably they have been bribing him to lose and to meet with players illegally. But then that's not even to the worst of it. So Brian Flores was fired this year, and it is now presumed that this is the cause of it, the friction there, him not abiding by the owner's wishes, the rules to tamper and throw games, essentially. After producing multiple successful winning seasons, he was fired. And at an organization that's historically not been the best in the past few decades on top of that. So he brought them a winning franchise, or started creating a winning culture there at the franchise. Upon leaving, Brian was interviewing with the New York Dolphins. And for those of you who don't understand Giants, sorry. For those of you who don't understand the rules in the NFL, essentially you are required to interview minority candidates for a job before you can, select a hire for a head coach or GMs, two very prominent positions in a football organization. Well, through texts that have been leaked, the Giants had already selected a coach before making said interviews. So they were essentially trying to perform sham interviews with successful coach Brian Flores in order to fulfill the affirmative action rules that the NFL currently has in place. So as a result, Flores has brought forward this lawsuit, which will certainly have a lot of ramifications. The NFL is not claiming any blame. They are saying that this suit has no merit within a few hours of its release. So,
bro.
Crazy.
Hey, I didn't know.
What's his record this year?
I didn't know
it was like
Deshaun Watson.
10.
I think they were 500.
No,
I believe.
He
was 500 last year and 500 this year. Yep. So, positive records, back-to-back seasons. For those of you who don't understand or know the demographics of the NFL, the players are 70% black. There's currently one black coach in the NFL, and I believe three black GMs currently.
Hey,
the Detroit Lions, Cleveland, and Minnesota are the only
Washington?
three.
Huh?
Rivera is Hispanic.
GM.
Are you talking about coaches? I thought you were talking about GMs.
Yeah, no.
Both.
One
Now,
head coach.
to counter what I said about Biden and other stuff about that, like the thing about this, it's like the majority of the NFL is black, so this don't make no sense to me. I honestly, like, who just hired the tight end coach for the Green Bay Packers to be the offensive coordinator for
the Broncos?
The Broncos.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it don't make sense to me. It just
Garbage.
don't. Like, it's just like, if you white in the NFL as a coach and your team has a successful season, you are liable to get get a higher position. You're liable to stay there longer. The Brian Flores thing, as soon as it happened, before all this stuff happened, like, everybody in the NFL was like, what? Like, everything was confused and like, blah, blah, blah. Like, why the hell they do that? And then this comes out, and now it's like, that's not what we were doing. Then what were you doing? What was the reason why you fired Brian Flores in the first place? Like, if this not the reason, what was the reason? Because it don't make sense, like, at all. So it's no validity behind any of that. Like, I really don't believe anything other than you just being racist, or he was being morally obligated to do the right thing, and you didn't think that was a good idea, so you fired him because he wasn't going along with it, which I believe is true. I feel like Brian Flores is about to get paid money, and I shout out to that man for getting paid, because this don't look good for the NFL.
And I just hate how much, like, the NFL, placates to being such a diverse organization. They have the helmet
and
logos
the racism.
with, in racism, stuff in the end zone. But nothing's gonna change till the top changes when because they're all ran by all the owners are old white men. So I mean, they have the final say in it. So we're gonna have to get our own. And that's why I love seeing like these little leagues pop up, the XFL, the other one I can't remember what that was called. Because until we get our own, like and until you kind of see what like homeboy Deion Sanders is doing at Jackson State, bringing all this money into HBCUs, making that the desirable product, and that's going to funnel more money into, like I think he made so much money for the city of Jackson, Mississippi, just after like 2 seasons. It's not going to change anytime soon. These owners have been doing this shit, and I think that the affirmative action rule that Andre is referring to is the Rooney Rule, and I don't think it was it was written out to be like the first step in tons of change and include like inclusivity and added diversity into the league. But we went from having, I can't remember what was the most amount of black coaches we had, but we down to 1. And people like Jim Caldwell have, been to, the playoffs multiple times, had multiple winning seasons, even with the Lions, our boys, and getting axed after, very small slip-ups, which is crazy because people get way more chances if you're white.
The Browns coach should be fired. I feel like if this is how this is going to play out, the Browns coach should be fired. There's a lot of coaches that should be fired. If that's like the way I've seen black coaches get fired, there's a lot of coaches in the NFL that should be fired. But like they say, they're just going to get better chances and opportunities.
And I think you touched on a good thing. It's not, and obviously there's an issue with opportunity, but it's also a big thing is they're getting shorter leashes than these white coaches are getting in terms of the ability to fail or not reach Super Bowls. I mean, Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season as a head coach, and people were talking about him going to taking the USC job.
He already knows.
People were talking about him taking the USC college job. Like he addressed it. He's like, no one's asking Sean Payton these types of questions. No one's asking these other prominent head coaches that have had losing seasons these type of questions. So it's just insane. Caldwell had 4 seasons, and maybe it is sometimes like, it's not saying that these black coaches should get these coaching jobs indefinitely, but it's back to equal opportunity, fitting the demographics of the players, equal expectations of these coaches that you're bringing in. I mean, the Texans had a black coach. You had a failing organization, had no capital, no money, anything. You brought in a black coach and you fired him in the first year because he didn't go to Super Bowl.
Do the teams get something for hiring a black coach?
So
they get like a draft
they get like
it's not the team that hires. It's not the team that hires. So the new rule implemented, I believe, last year, the year before. So Rams are going to be the first team to get picks off of this, and I think the Saints might as well. So if you have a black person in your organization, or minority, so a non-white person in your organization, and they get hired out to a head coach or GM job, then the team that essentially groomed that person and got them the job would get, I think it's a 3rd round pick in exchange. So the Rams organization, since they groomed a black GM and sent him over to the Lions, they're gonna get a 3rd round pick towards like the end of the 3rd round for their contribution to the league.
Contribution. Good job, league.
So it's an extra pick for the round, is what compensation picks are.
Yeah.
I mean, but like teams don't even use it, so it's like pointless. Like they're not even. It's like pointless because these dudes, they're not getting hired.
And I don't know what because obviously like ownership isn't going to change, so it makes it tough to implement. Like, I don't like the Rooney Rule. I don't like this hiring rule where you give teams like incentive. I think it's like another necessary evil, because if they didn't have the Rooney Rule, like, we would have never found out about this. There would be people not getting hired like at all, or even getting interviews. So. And we hear this all the time. There's all these black coaches that are qualified for these jobs. I mean, Eric Bieniemy has been to how many conference championships and how many Super Bowls now, and
with a revolutionary offense.
has been the OC for the hottest quarterback in football the past 4 or 5 years, and hasn't landed a head coaching job for some of these very anemic organizations.
Not even like a formal request. Bro.
Does he want to stay though?
I don't know.
He's interviewed.
No, I think he's gotten
Yeah.
interviews. He's gotten formal request interviews. They just haven't hired him.
I mean,
they haven't hired him because they looked at his background. And I think he got in trouble.
He got in trouble when he was. I think it was in the early 2000s, 90s when he was at like Colorado.
But it was
State.
Because he played in the NFL as well. I don't know if it was when he was a player or shortly after he retired. But he got in some type of trouble with the law. I think he was like intoxicated or something. And sadly for us, I mean, like we always, I mean, as black men, we've always been told that we have to always go the extra step to even get an equal ground.
Because I want to know if any head coach in the NFL has gotten in trouble. That's what I want to know. Out of 32 of them that's been hired in the last 10 years, have they been in trouble before they got hired? Probably.
But it's different for us,
Yeah, I get it. Like that's the
we held to a certain standard.
Even the thing is, like, even the owners aren't held to standards, right? So it's. I mean, inevitably, because like look at the Snyders. Look at the Snyders. Like that organization is terrible.
Got that money, man.
Like look at all the stuff they're finding out about. They got Gruden in trouble essentially through that investigation of the Snyders, the owners of the
stadium,
the former Washington football team, now the Washington Commanders. The name we will not speak, their former name, their dead name. Through the investigation of their, terrible organization, they found out that Gruden was racist and he got fired. But none of the owners face any ramifications. You have the Texans owner saying that we're letting the prisoners run loose. Like, there's no ramifications for obviously any of these owners. The only team without an owner is the Green Bay Packers, so they don't have to face any of this. They have a board, but.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy for sure. But I mean, shout out to Brian Flores for taking the stand. Because I mean, like we all know, like he'll probably never end up coaching the NFL, and that's sad to say. Because I mean, like he was with what he was given with the Dolphins. I mean, you seen like a turn. You started seeing, that a promise. So I mean, like he was a promising coach, and I mean, I hope that he gets another chance. I mean, it's looking slim just based off of. Who he might have offended in the lawsuit and everything, and he's going against the league and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely gonna be tough. But I mean, like, shout out to Brian Flores for trying to promote change, and hopefully a change does come out.
Yeah, I think.
What do you guys think the Dolphins will face? Like what?
I think that Brian knows that. I think Brian knows what he's what the ramifications are going to be for his personal career when it comes to this. Like it's kind of sacrificial, like lamb type deal. He knows he's not going to get another NFL job, but I think he kind of realized like it's not looking like I'm going to get one anyway. Like I had multiple 500 records with a losing organization and still couldn't get hired. And you're going to tell me I got to go back to being a linebacker coach? Like, no. So I think that inevitably the league's going to settle out of court and pay him a lot of money. I think the Dolphins are going to settle out of court and pay him a lot of money. I think the Giants are going to settle out of court and pay him a lot of money. If the Giants stuff is true, they're going to have to give up day 2 picks, most likely, second or third round picks. I don't know if it'll go up to a first, but they're probably going to have to give up picks. And the Dolphins, they could face criminal charges. Like, you can't do that. That's like manipulating money, like what they were doing.
The owner or the organization?
I don't know who would face it.
The owner.
Because it's not a corporation.
But he's saying that he's saying that Ross, the owner, is the one who. That's who he cited in the suit.
Because I don't think they're corporation. I know as a corporation you can get sued out the ass, and your corporation can take the fall. But if it's the owner who they're suing, it's totally different.
I think that they're just gonna basically what they're gonna do is they're gonna make him sell the team. He has to sell the team, bro. There's no way you can literally say tank.
Who's gonna pay Brian? Well, it's criminal charges, like Jay said. Who's gonna suffer from those criminal charges? The owner or
probably the owner. I mean, like if it's the owner, the owner really has the authority, or maybe the GM too. But I mean, like the owner and the GM really the only people that have the authority to be like, hey, tank for us, because they the ones that the GM build the team, and then the owner is the one that's supplying the money so the team can be built. So those the
Jay,
only
do you know
two.
who's getting these criminal charges, if there are criminal charges?
I would assume it would be I would assume that Ross, the owner, would have to be
held
the first
liable.
to line up. But they like there's gonna be a paper, like they're gonna have to investigate this. Like everyone's emails are getting pulled, everyone's text messages are getting pulled, and if it turns out like, yeah, there was a meeting with Deshaun Watson and these text messages and all these emails, like you can't burn this stuff. They found it all about the Snyders. Like there's gonna be a paper trail.
The NFL statement like literally came out 20 minutes after that story dropped, and they said that this is without merit, which was very weird. Like it was very defensive, and I feel like it's just because they have to say this didn't happen. Like at first, I feel like.
Well, because the NFL is trying to cover their ass. Because if Bill Belichick knew that they had found a hire in New York before Brian Flores even interviewed, it's very likely people in the NFL knew, in the organization of like the NFL, like Roger Goodell's tree. So that's very dangerous to, I don't know, the product you're trying to push in this, equal opportunity of hiring act.
Yeah. We'll see what comes of it. I'm sure we'll have an update soon.
All right. So if you're listening to this, you'll likely listen to this post Sunday, which is the Pro Bowl, which is notably the most boring all-star event of all major four sports in the United States. Obviously, everyone loves the all-star basketball weekend. Baseball is pretty popular. Hockey fans love their all-star weekend. And us football fans get pretty left out with our all-star weekend because it's absolutely a complete joke. So we'll kind of go around the horn. And what would you guys change about the Pro Bowl to make it more interesting?
Tay, I think that you can go first, man.
Oh,
I hear your voice.
Thank you.
Keith Sweat.
Yeah. But I think for me, I think how it would change the in-game format is I think we should just do away with the physical game aspect of just like tackle football, because at this point in the season, like the Pro Bowl is a pretty lax environment. Every All-Star game is pretty lax, so nobody really want to go out there smashing heads and tackling and hitting like Sean Taylor out there. People just kind of want to have a chill, weekend. See the boys and ball. And stuff like that, but for me, the in-game adjustment I'll probably make would just be it would be like 7-on-7. So you would just all the players who were nominated as Pro Bowlers, you just have a draft, and this includes linemen, and I feel like that would be a big fans will really enjoy the linemen being able to play skill positions as well, because when in game, whenever you see a big man score a touchdown, everybody, the stands, people in the stands going crazy on TV. That's all everything. That's what everybody's talking on TV is the big guy scoring. So I feel like that would definitely generate some buzz. Seeing a lineman, split out wide. You see like Tristan Wirfs lined up on Trayvon Diggs or something. I mean, I feel like that would be like a pretty social media buzz, and that would kind of generate just a fun atmosphere for the Pro Bowl. As far as outside of the game, I feel like they do a good job of implementing the skill challenges that they do, showcasing the football players' athleticism through different events. So the only thing I would probably change is just the in-game format and just make it less physical, because no player really wants to play hardcore tackle football at that point in the season.
I think honestly the biggest thing we should change is probably like having like a dance battle with like Jackson Mahomes. Like everybody has to dance like Jackson Mahomes, and then I'm pretty sure, and like whatever the trending thing is for the year, like Jackson Mahomes, I feel like something should be incorporated with that. Okay, just like make a joke of it. I honestly, if that was true, I would tune in. For a couple seconds.
This man said Jackson.
I think I think the skill games are cool. I think the dodgeball is cool. Throwing the ball, the target practice whatever they have is cool. I love your idea about the big men in 7-on-7. Like if I could see Vita Vea running routes, guarded by Quentin Nelson, that would make for great TV. I would love to see them big boys running routes and shit. I think it's really hard for the NFL to, have the same atmosphere. You're talking about having a fun atmosphere. the NBA season is 83 games long. MLB is 164, I think. I don't know how much hockey is, but it's a longer season. They see each other a lot more often. So, if you play for, the Detroit Pistons and somebody else play for like the San Antonio Spurs, you guys see each other a lot more. You guys can build those relationships, I don't think those sports are as intense and violent and, not saying competitive, but they're not as, kill or be killed as football. So, once you step on the field, maybe they shake hands after trading jerseys, talk on Instagram every so often, but they're not really, interacting as much as these other sports. So when it does come time for those All-Star weekends, they're not having as much fun. I just went to battle with you 4 weeks ago. I really don't like you. You twisted up my leg. You checked my oil. I'll be doing that.
What do you mean by that?
I swear, you guys play football.
What is check my oil, man? I don't know what you're talking about.
If you're under the pile,
I'm joking. Don't explain.
Oh, you do know it. Okay, I'm glad I'm not tripping. Okay,
Dad's been under plenty of piles, bro. Plenty of them.
Plenty of piles and fought a lot of people. So that's
exactly. So if you see them, you see them at an All-Star game a couple weeks down the road, it's like, I ain't gonna fuck with you. Like, fuck you. So I think that's going to be a hard thing to overcome to get it to the level that, the other sports are.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think they should dismantle. I think they should kind of how the NBA did a few years ago. I think they should go away from NFC and AFC and just if they move some towards like a flag football game, just have like 4, 5, 6, however many teams, and just pick from the pool of players and don't do like the whole NFC AFC split. Get these guys intermingled. You elect the captain or something along those lines. Yeah, Pro Bowls or something like that.
Pro Bowls are pretty important, though. Like, not saying like important to watch on TV, but like contract wise,
it's important for checks.
For checks. It can still be competitive, though.
I'm saying, but if you put the power into one person's hands to pick who the team is,
it's still the fan vote. It's still the fan vote, but you pick from that pool from Pro Bowlers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like weighted. Okay. Like the fan vote only counts for so much weight too when they do the Pro Bowl. So I think also, a lot of NFL players, I hate Madden, but I think it would be interesting if you had them play the game where they're all separate players and then just threw them all on a TV or something like that and had them all play together. Or my last proposal would be have them coach a 7-on-7 team of fans from their area. And these people are sitting there rooting for like 30 and 40-year-olds from Detroit or like Denver or something, playing against Joe Schmo and being coached by, not Vommer, but now like Drew Lock coaching the Denver Broncos, G League team versus the Detroit Lions being coached by TJ Hawkinson or something like that.
Yeah. That'd be fun. That could be cool.
They should find people on Twitter that's been talking shit the whole time, and then
like pros versus Joes.
Yeah, somebody got to sign a waiver after that.
Before we head into our last topic of the Super Bowl preview, one thing I want to ask: if Lawrence Taylor or Tom Brady or Deion Sanders, if it came out not tested, like they didn't test positive, if it came out that they were like doping or something like that throughout their career, these guys are like the greats of the greats. Like it's the gap is so far that without doping or cheating or using some type of PEDs, that they would still be above everyone else. If that came out, would you still say they should go into the Hall of Fame?
I mean, two already in. I mean, Tom Brady.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, if that came out, like, would you retroactively say, like, okay, Lawrence Taylor, Deion Sanders, like, you got to pop out, or like Tom Brady, you can't go in now? And I'm like, obviously, the gap between these guys and the next, like, these are top 5 greatest football players ever, undisputably. Like, how would you react and how you view them? Should they still be a part of the Hall of Fame or go to the Hall of Fame in their future?
That's a good way to look at it.
I don't know, man. That's a good way to look at it. I just thought he was.
I don't know.
I know you're referencing Barry Bonds.
Yes, because I know we're all football guys, but I don't want to leave out our other sports fans. So Barry Bonds, there's a lot of debate as to whether he should be, and we don't have to dig too much into this topic, but I just want to highlight some things, because as someone that doesn't watch baseball avidly, some of these stats are still insane. And the reason I asked the question that way is because Barry Bonds never tested positive for using steroids.
Oh.
He never tested, like, not within like the institution, but they won't let him in. And obviously, it's known that he played in a steroid era where a lot of people were using steroids. Hitting dingers.
Quite.
So I'm just gonna.
So wait, he never tested positive? So it doesn't.
Not for like MLB testing. I think it wasn't like legal. I don't know the exact parameters, but no, like it was just found out essentially that he was using steroids. And that's the reason I ask about those type of guys and Brady, because when I think of those guys, I don't think that there's any amount of cheating they could have done to make me think of them not as Hall of Famers.
Is Julian Edelman going to the Hall of Fame?
I don't think so.
Okay. No, go ahead.
I don't think so. Okay. But I don't think there's an amount of cheating that like those guys, even if it came out retroactively, that they could have done for me to remove them from the Hall of Fame, because they were so dominant. Like even if I cut their career in half of what they did, they would still likely be Hall of Famers. And that's how Barry Bonds is.
But you just talked about like how criminal it is to be, cheating against the game with the whole Dolphins thing. And technically, I don't care how good they are, they still cheated, So I think that if the Hall of Fame is...
Well, Dolphins didn't cheat. They were trying to pay someone to lose.
Well,
the thing is with Barry Bonds, though, is that he didn't test positive. So that's my thing. This is a he say thing. Like, if Tom Brady really says, like, yeah, Tom Brady been doping for, like, the last... whatever.
Let me read off some of these stats. And I think even as non-baseball watchers, anyone would say this is insane. So he had this insane run in like the late 90s, early 2000s. So from 2001 to 2004, he averaged 260. So like a quarter of the time of his at-bats, he was getting on base. But he was slugging at 605. So that means when he was facing 2 strikes and no balls, the worst count you can face in baseball, he was hitting 600. So more than half the time when facing the worst count in baseball, he was getting on base. He had in 2004 and 2002, he was getting on base over half the time because of how often he was getting walked and how often he was getting hits. He had he broke his home run record season. So he broke the previous record in 2002.
How many dingers?
He hit 82. Oh no, sorry. I'm reading off the wrong stat. He hit 73 home runs in a season, breaking, I think, Mark McGwire's record, who was also juicing at the time. Sammy Sosa was juicing. All these guys were juicing.
Are these guys MLB proven juicing?
Juicers.
I believe Mark McGwire was caught. Yeah, okay. I think Mark and Sammy got caught. Okay. I could be wrong, though.
If you ain't caught, you good. That's what I feel like. Fuck it.
But I don't even think the home run part is the insane part. I think it's how scared everyone was to throw to him. So in 2002, he was walked 68 times. That broke the record before that by 23.
Jesus.
In 2004, he was walked 61 times, I believe, if I have these years right. And in 2006, on 617 appearances at the plate, he was walked 120 times and still hit 45 home runs. He was, over the course of his career, he was walked 41 times with no one on base. Nobody on base, and people chose to walk him 41 times.
Would people be this scared of him if he wasn't... Well, I don't like this example because we don't know if he was really juicing, but would people be this scared of him if he was not juicing?
I think the argument people would make is that he still hit the ball. Like, regardless of how far he was hitting it, he was still hitting the hell out of the ball. Okay. Yes, he was still making contact. And I guess you could say his bat speed was better, but he still had to hit the ball. So I think one of the crazy stories that a lot of people will harken back to is in 1998, the bases were loaded.
I saw this.
And they walked him. And it worked out. I mean, they scored the run, obviously, because you walked him. But afterwards, the guy that was on deck flew out to right field, so it ended the inning. just absolutely insane stats. So, props to Barry Bonds. Hopefully they let you in eventually. But I was just curious, how like some football heads would feel if like some of the greats in our sport weren't let into the Hall of Fame.
I wouldn't want them in. Because
if they got found out, I mean, yeah, you cheated the game.
The thing about you cheated, like that's not upholding. Like the big thing about the Hall of Fame is upholding the game. You're going into like the annals of the game, where if it's 100 years from now, they're gonna see your stats, they're gonna see your bust. And I don't want to take my kids there and be like, oh, I want, oh, Dad, I want to be, I want to be the next Tom Brady. I don't want my kid to go see Tom Brady like bust and be like, oh, wait, son, let me tell you, this guy's a cheater. You don't want to be like him.
I think the hard compare too is that so many people in baseball were doing it at the time.
Are they in the Hall of Fame? Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, everyone that was juicing didn't get caught. I mean, he was doing this for like a 22-year career. I don't know if he was juiced the whole time, but you didn't get caught for 22 years, so obviously other people didn't get caught either.
How do you not get caught?
I just didn't say it.
So you think Tom Brady would be?
Have somebody else pee for you.
You want him still in the Hall of Fame?
If Tom got caught doping, and everyone knows me, I am the leader of the Tom Brady hater club. If Tom came out and he was doping, I don't think I could still say that he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
No, I'll do what you want with him, bro.
But he wouldn't have been that good. He wouldn't have lasted as long without juicing.
You could take 10 years off of Tom Brady's career, and he's still a Hall of Famer. That's the thing.
The whole time.
But you cheated, bro. You cheated.
You cheated.
3 Hall of Fame.
I mean, I can go cheat too. I don't know, bro.
If everyone was juicing, they would still be the best. Like, that's the thing.
But everyone wasn't juicing.
Everyone was juicing, though, presumably, because he wasn't caught either, technically.
I mean, technically, he wasn't caught, so that's the only thing I get. Like, he wasn't caught, so I don't know why they holding it against him. You ain't never test me positive.
But he's saying if he wasn't caught, probably everyone was juicing. He was the best of all the juicers.
Exactly.
Anyone in the comments know how to get the juice? Comment below. I would love to get jacked.
Little boy.
So, yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. Can't leave our baseball fans left out. But what we'll finish on for the day is we are going to do our Super Bowl preview, and then we'll end the segment with our picks on who will win the Super Bowl. Obviously, the Bengals, after 30 years of a playoff win drought, make it with Joe Burr in his second year, a huge turnaround going from essentially worst to possibly first come the Super Bowl. And our hometown hero, Matt Stafford, on the other side, left Detroit in his first year and goes to the Super Bowl. Clearly shutting up all the haters, showing them that he's been elite this whole time. Elite. And obviously our terrible franchise has been holding them back. Mm-hmm. So, any initial thoughts about, the franchises, any players, the game? I know I have some thoughts, but I'll let you guys, kick it off.
I just want to have a moment of silence for Matthew Stafford. Just in awe of his greatness. Honestly, in all of his greatness. I've heard a lot of hate with Matthew Stafford. Some people on this podcast, not going to say who it is, but it starts with a D, ends with a E, I think. Ends with an E. I'm not going to talk about him, though.
What are you trying to... What did I say? It sounded like
I ain't going to say what it is. I ain't even say
I don't think I've ever disrespected
him.
Put him on the grill. Put him on the grill, Dad.
My name starts with a D.
I've been saying Matthew Stafford was a top 5 quarterback for the last 5 years. I've been saying it numerous times. I've been hated for it. Matthew Stafford, he did it. He did it. Now, I will agree with you that the Lions suck, Dante. I will agree with you with that.
Top 5.
Top 5.
He took it from the GOAT, too.
Top 5.
He took it from the GOAT.
And we can blame Todd Bowles.
Y'all thought that Tom thought that he was going to ride out in the sunset. He was going to retire after going to the Super Bowl one more time.
Todd Bowles.
And guess who said no?
Todd Bowles.
Our boy.
You can blame Todd Bowles for running the zero blitz.
But I'm also very proud of Joe Burrow
as
well. Joe Burrow, Joe Burr, Joe Shiesty.
How did that rebuild happen that fast? Why can't that be us?
I don't think that their team was as anemic as people make it out to be. It wasn't a good team. Obviously, they
got young
had
talent.
The first pick. But they had a lot of young talent, and they had a lot of money in free agency this year.
They got some dogs in free agency.
I think it's hard compared to some other like more perilous organizations. Like they lost their franchise quarterback and Andy Dalton, who had been there a long time, and like say what you want about Andy Dalton, he was an MVP caliber quarterback for a couple of years. Like,
oh Lord.
He was pushing for the MVP in that one year that they went to the playoffs, regardless of what you think about him. And he kind of led that. They lost A.J. Green. He had some prime years there. So they lost a lot of pieces that kind of carried that franchise for some time. So obviously, like resetting, you had a rookie head coach. So there's like a lot of factors at play as to probably why they looked so bad. But I don't think they were as bad on paper as, their record would show before they drafted Joe Burrow.
I feel like with Joe Burrow, we getting like a touch that Tom Brady had like that touch of God feel. Like everywhere he go, like it just clicks, everything works out. And I kind of feel like we kind of starting to see that with Joe, where he just touched, because I don't think he's like a crazy great athlete. I mean, he wasn't starting at Ohio State, had a crazy year at LSU where he was kind of touched by God. And
I'm gonna be honest, all that's out the window on Sunday though. Next Sunday, all that's out the window. You cannot hide behind a terrible offensive line for that long, especially against Aaron Donald and Devon Miller. It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be a bloodbath.
Well, we just going to see. All I gotta say is Baker Mayfield will pay for his crimes against Odell Beckham Jr.
Hey, I know. I don't know how everyone else.
Free
I
Odell.
I know we are on free team Odell, but Odell, like personally, I
loves
like
Odell.
Odell is my favorite receiver in the NFL. He's one of my favorite players.
They gave me a bag for Odell in fantasy one year. A bag.
I have traded for Odell in all my fantasy because I believed, and now I look right everywhere in all my league. Now I look like an evil genius for going and getting Odell. Thank you, Odell Senior. Odell's dad is the greatest player not in the NFL. Executive of the year.
Shout out Brian. Shout out Brian.
And I have come a long way because I used to not care for Odell during that Josh Norman phase, and after that kind of cleared up and his like ending years when he got hurt with New York, I came around my favorite receiver in the NFL, one of my favorite players. And Matt Stafford is my favorite player ever in the NFL. Still a long career ahead of him, hopefully with the Rams. So I am really, excited about this game. And I want to say how I think everyone is in this place with this Super Bowl where everyone's just happy about getting to different teams. There's a lot of players that deserve it. Joe Burrow, obviously, Matt Stafford we touched on, Odell we've touched on, Aaron Donald another chance to maybe solidify his legacy. Von Miller obviously has a Super Bowl as an MVP, but further solidifies his legacy. Jalen Ramsey, there's all these guys. And a guy who was doubted all preseason, and Jamar Chase, people were saying he was a bust. He gets drafted
out for me this year in
six overall and has gone nuts. Has gone from a bust in the preseason to arguably one of the best receivers in the NFL. So
that whole wide receiver core,
I can imagine being drafted that early and then contributing to essentially a franchise making it to the Super Bowl after 30 years of not winning.
One of the best in the league.
Well, I think I still got to take Rams on this one, but I wouldn't hate seeing. No, I want to see Matty get one, but I hope it's a real good game, and I hope the Bengals keep it up.
Score?
I hate to see them.
Score.
The score. Well, I think it's gonna be kind of low scoring. So I'm gonna say.
What's the spread right now? What's the spread on this game?
I think maybe 32 to 21 or something.
32 to 21.
That ain't really low. 31. Somebody let. 31 points.
I lived in KC for a little bit, so I'm used to niggas scoring.
We was hanging out with Jackson.
All right.
Yeah.
They at home.
They
at home.
You and him.
TikToking.
They at home. We
was TikToking the L house, but nah. Matt, I'm back home. I'm back in the D. Matty Stafford got it, baby.
Like I said prior.
So the Rams are currently 4.5 point favorites right now, I believe, if I'm reading this from the Sports Illustrated article.
Who you got, Dabs?
I love
you got the Rams.
Joe Burrow, probably my favorite quarterback in the league, other than
He say this
Nope.
about every young quarterback, y'all.
Let me speak.
You didn't say. You said something about Justin
No,
Fields
I
this
didn't.
year.
He won't talk about.
Justin.
He won't talk about Justin. He ain't never talk about Justin.
Who was talking about Justin?
He don't hate him, but he never talked about Justin.
That was Tay.
We'll keep the takes that have been said on the pod. Yeah, we'll keep the takes that have been said on the pod.
One of my favorite quarterbacks in the league. Like I said, games ago, even like last year, before he tore his ACL, I like the Bengals rebuild a lot. Even though that I gotta go with the Rams just because of the offensive line, defensive line situation. I literally watched the defensive line the whole entire time. I seen Aaron Donald last week. I seen Von Miller. They're on tip. And that offensive line for the Bengals is a liability. Now, I don't know how Joe Shiesty did it with the 9 sacks and winning and all that, but this week not happening again. I got the Rams winning by more than 14 points.
I guess
14
in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's gonna be a bloodbath.
For me, I think I'm a rock with the Rams on this one. I want to see Aaron Donald get a ring. I want to see Odell get a ring. Odell free. We all about Odell over here. I want to see Jalen Ramsey get a ring, and I feel like the Bengals just young. They're young.
You're missing one person.
Yeah.
Matt Stafford. My bad.
That's
y'all.
crazy.
Sorry, Detroit.
That's
my
crazy.
bad. I mean, my bad. My bad. Look, I'm not from.
We didn't welcome you with open
I'm
arms.
not originally from Detroit. Y'all know y'all diehards and everything. So y'all, this is like
This is the closest thing we ever gonna get.
You know,
Yeah.
personal,
Yeah.
personal for y'all. So it's the closest thing. So my bad, Matthew Stafford. I'm sorry.
Our Super Bowl.
But I think I'm gonna rock with the Rams on this one. Just think the Bengals. They got a promising future. Joe Shiesty gonna run the league for a long time. So I mean, they gonna have a lot more.
AFC so tough though. I don't know.
They gonna have
good quarterbacks.
They're gonna have a lot more chance. I'll say they have a lot more chances to get back to.
There's so many good quarterbacks. I don't know.
But I think I'm
Josh and did you guys give your point, Debs? Did you give what you thought? You said a 14-point victory.
I think I'm a rock with the Rams. I'm gonna say 31-21.
31-21. Okay, that's a decent spread. Yeah, I obviously you can tell by the way I've been talking. The way this playoff has gone, the Rams have been up and down this year. They had that 5-game losing streak or 4-game losing streak where everyone had lost faith after that huge hype that they had going into the year after they were beating all those teams. Yeah. And this playoff, I look at the way the Bengals' path, and winning games is winning games. That you did what you had to do, but at no point in their first game, they won pretty fair and square. But during that Titans game and during that Chiefs game, they did not look like they won those games. It looks like those other teams failed to close. Mm-hmm. Ryan Tannehill sold. It looked like Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid sold. You had them beat. When I look at the Rams and who they play, the Cardinals started on fire this year, and they just deleted them off the face of the earth in that first round. Then you go and beat Tampa, who's Tom Brady, one of the hottest teams in football still. Obviously, on paper, you look at their roster, top to bottom, it's one of the best in football. And regardless of what that score says, they beat the hell out of them that game. If it weren't for 4 turnovers, it might have been a 20-point win. It was an ass whooping. It shouldn't have been close. And then you come into the championship game, and you win in a close game, but you beat a team that's had your number for how long now? Beat you twice this year. So to get over that hump, I think they've just been so dominant. Tennessee wrecked terror on Joe Burrow. So I don't even want to know what Aaron Donald's going to do. I hope Joe just stays safe, honestly, because
they
have a young future. And they have a long dynasty forming, not dynasty, but a good group of young guys forming there. So they'll have their shots, but
I don't know.
I'm rooting for Matty, my favorite guy ever.
The true Matty.
What's the score?
But that's our Super Bowl takes.
The true Matty Ice.
Oh,
what's the score?
I'll give it. I'm gonna go 28-21. It'll be. I think it'll win by at least by a score. 28-21. I don't think they'll. It's the Super Bowl. I'm not gonna count the Bengals out. They've clearly proved me wrong twice now in that Titans and Chiefs game. But if in the amount of possibilities that I see, I definitely see in 60% of them the Rams winning this game. So, but I think we have a Rams sweep up here, so hopefully, we'll see what happens.
Hey, look, bro. I love Jalen, but he kind of been slipping up.
Yeah, he has been acting up lately.
That's my dog. Like, he number one, but he been slipping up.
Toast.
Very physical, bro, but Jalen physical too. Like Jamar get that separation with physicality.
We gonna see.
It's not his footwork off the line.
We gonna see Jalen.
I'm telling you, bro. Jalen
got to be on his P's and Q's.
We can't wait to hit you guys with our recap.
Yeah,
definitely give you guys our insight from the game.
What we thought about
the
game,
in a couple
big
weeks.
game.
We'll be back.
All right, so to close out, we got one last segment. This segment's called Just the Tip, and it's when one of our bros gonna come on, just give a little bit of life of just something small, not something too extra, just something small to improve your daily life.
Just
Give us something, brother Dabs. Give us something.
So
enlighten us,
we don't know
brother.
what's coming, so the pressure's on for Josh because I don't know what he's about to tell.
All right, tip
us right
of the day. Tip for all my bros out here. Make sure.
Just a tip.
Make sure you shower when you get home, doing whatever you're doing at night, and then also shower in the morning. Okay. This way, when you go to bed, right? You go to bed. You've been sleeping for 8 hours. Make sure you shower. You haven't showered in 8 hours. All right. And you're going to work. And you're going to be at work. And you're going to be stinking. All right. Plus, if you get into bed, okay, and you didn't shower, that's kind of dirty, all right? So make sure you shower at night and in the morning, It don't take that long. Just cut it into your daily routine because I know a lot of y'all ain't showering like that, all right? Tip of the day.
Everything all right at work? Who sit next to you at work?
Yeah, he sneaked this to somebody.
I ain't even saying it's not even my
If you work with Dabs.
I'm not talking about y'all. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Hey, just be environmentally conscious about your shower. Some of y'all taking 40-minute showers out there. Just give me 2 10-minute ones or 2 5-minute ones. Yeah, like you say, you ain't got to be in there all day long. But yeah, keep them yellow stains off the mattress. Them sweat stains and stuff like that. And keep yourself clean. Wash your behind and wash your legs.
Wash your beauty.
All right, signing off, folks. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
See ya.